I'm Debbie Schwartz, founder of Road2College and the Paying for College 101 group. I'm just going to do a tiny bit of housekeeping and then we can get started. If anybody wants to, this is just my little pet peeve, to put their video on. I just like to see people's faces instead of like talking to the blackness out there. So thank you for people who are putting the faces or putting your videos on so I can see you. And you should come in on the event muted. This is actually a meeting as opposed to official webinar. If again, you should be coming in muted. Let me just double check. I see people coming in. Yeah, it says mute. Okay. If you can make sure you're muted, you can absolutely unmute yourself if you have a question. But if you don't have any questions to ask, it would be better if you do keep yourself muted. We just won't hear the background noise. This is recorded and you'll get a link to the recording tomorrow. And my only other kind of little housekeeping is I'd love to see if people can put in the chat where they're watching from. Do they have a sophomore, junior, or senior? I imagine most of the people on today have seniors, but like to know if there's anybody else here. And if you have a senior, kind of where you are in the process. Hopefully, things have gotten started because there are early deadlines coming up. So just let me know a little bit where you're at. So good. I see some sophomores and juniors. And a senior feeling overwhelmed. I can understand that feeling. Senior getting the list complete, working on the Common App and essays, plan to apply by November 1st. Good for you. Okay, so a little bit of a range. Today I am focusing on merit scholarships. I have a lot to talk through and get through for the hour, but if there's other questions, you can put them in chat. I will try and answer just, questions in general. But I am trying to talk about merit scholarships, how you figure out whether or not your student might be eligible, and how you find those colleges that can offer your student merit. So somebody has a senior with a few acceptances and merit offers. That's great for you. If you want to share in the chat any tips that you use to find those colleges that your student got the merit at, that would be great. I'll also say, Kay, for you, I'll put it in right now. We have a tool called Compare Offers that once families get their offers, they can go in and share them. It's a place you can kind of collect all your students' offers, and then as other students at the same schools where your student applied to and got in start sharing their offers, you get to see what other students got at the same schools. So I just put that in the chat for you. Okay, let me share my slides and we'll get going. Let's see. Okay, if somebody can just put in the chat that you can see the slides, that would be great. Just want to make sure. Great, thank you. Okay, I'm going to get going. So today I'm going to, talk about merit scholarships. I'm going to talk about the other different numbers you need to know about your situation and why they're important. We'll talk about how to build a balanced college list, which would probably be a little bit more helpful for the families with the younger students. And then I'm going to show you a tool that we have called R2C Insights, which helps with this process in terms of making it easier to look at data, makes it easier to find the colleges where your student can hopefully get merit. So why do we focus so much on merit scholarships? It's really because of in the bigger picture of how you pay for colleges. Families that do not have or not going to get need-based aid, their biggest tool for lowering the cost of college is honestly finding colleges that can offer merit scholarships. And this is just a really quick overview of how families can usually pay for college. There's 3 buckets. Money that you've hopefully been able to save, we don't really, that varies from family to family, how much they've been able to put away, whether it's in 529s or just money that they've put aside. A lot of times families also try and continue to cash flow from their current income. Your student, goes away, maybe the expenses that you had while your student was at school, you put towards, a payment plan that a college might have. So that's another way to help throughout the year pay for college. And then the middle bucket is free money. And free money can come in the form of need-based aid, which we'll talk a little bit about that. Comes in the form of merit scholarships. It comes in the form of private scholarships and then government grants. My 2 cents quick comment about private scholarships. It is not that they are bad. It is potentially something your student can do. But to me, it's something you kind of do after you put the effort towards something that you can get a bigger return on. And private scholarships just take a lot more time. They're going to come in smaller denominations. They'll be like $500, $1,000, $1,500. That's all great and it all adds up, but it's not going to make as big of a dent as applying to the right colleges that can offer you student merit scholarships. So there's kind of like a saying that we have that the largest scholarship your student's going to get is from the college they attend. So that's why it's so important to do the research about where your student applies, because they can only go and get accepted from a school that they send in an application to. So the biggest scholarship money is going to come from merit scholarships if you do this process right. And lastly, obviously, the end bucket is borrowed money. If you don't have enough money from family contributions, if you didn't get enough money from merit scholarships, and there's still this gap, then parents have to find a way to borrow money. The federal government, gives your students access to federal loans. You get access to the Parent Plus loan if you want. There's private lenders. Some people consider taking HELOCs out on their home. So there's, other ways to borrow, but of course we want to minimize what you need to borrow. The only reason I bring this up is because families, if you don't understand the loans, there's an unrealistic expectation that your student can borrow whatever they need on their own and parents do not need to be involved. And that's just false. So your student can only borrow from the federal government without a cosigner up to the limits that the federal government has. And just to give you an example of what those limits are, in freshman year, your student can borrow $5,500. Not bad, but that's it. That's not going to cover a lot of gaps that some families have. In sophomore year, it goes up to $6,500. In junior and senior year, it's $7,500. That's the only money your student's going to be able to borrow without a parent or a credit-worthy adult being involved. Everything else, in terms of a loan from a private lender, a parent or a credit-worthy adult is going to need to co-sign. And then if you decide to borrow from the government in the Parent Plus loan, that is all on the parent. So I just put that out there now because families are too shocked when they find out a little later in the year, like in March, and thinking, oh, I thought my student would just be able to get a loan for all this and I don't need to be on the hook. And that's just not the case. So just want people to know that earlier instead of later. Okay. Just again, this is just to emphasize how important your student's college list is. It ultimately drives all the outcomes, right? The colleges on your student's list are going to determine how much you're going to pay for college. The colleges on your student's list are going to be ultimately where they are going to be accepted. And then particularly for those families with seniors going through this now, but maybe this is a heads up for the junior families, the number of colleges on your student list determines how much work this whole process takes. And that doesn't, I'm not saying that to scare people or limit the number of colleges that your student should apply to, but just be aware that there is the Common App, and we think, oh, well, there's only this one essay, and my student will just fill out the Common App and it will, kind of be easy. That's the purpose of the Common App. That definitely was the purpose of the Common App when it started, but what has happened is that colleges have added their own specific essays. So a college might have 2 supplemental essays, or we're going to talk a little later on. If your student is applying to the honors program, that's another essay. And then all of a sudden, your student is applying to, maybe 6 to 10 colleges, and they might have an additional 5 or 6 essays in addition to the personal essay that's on the Common App that they need to complete. And then that's where it becomes overwhelming. I have gotten calls in the last 3 weeks from families, kind of this light bulb has gone off saying, oh my God, I didn't realize how many essays my student had to do. I didn't realize, they need either help knowing what to write about, or just somebody to review their essays. And so again, just giving you the heads up that this is something you should plan for. And this is, again, in the ideal world, why we encourage students and families to get as much done this summer before senior year. Okay. Just a quickie, like, what is merit aid? The people use the term merit scholarships. Quite honestly, they're using the term tuition discounts because, in effect, it is a discount on the costs of college, COA, which is the sticker price of what colleges have on their websites. Colleges use this type of money. It's their money. It's what they call institutional aid. And they're using it to attract, in a lot of cases, a stronger student that might not have considered their college. So that's why when we're going to talk in a little bit, why the students whose test scores or GPA are in the top, what we call 25th percentile, at the top of his college's range, have the best chances of being offered merit, because the colleges are using the money strategically and they want to attract a stronger student because, ultimately they want to see their rankings increase. And whether or not, maybe rankings don't hold as strong of a place as they used to, but they still have a place. And colleges are still looking to how can we make ourselves more attractive by increasing on the rankings. And one of the ways is by having students attend and enroll their colleges that have, better GPAs, higher test scores, and it kind of raises up all their stats, which raises them in the rankings. Hopefully, it's clear that merit scholarships is not dependent on your family's finances or their income or the number that comes out from the FAFSA, which we'll talk about. So there isn't a financial component related to merit scholarships. It's awarded to the top percentile students, which I just mentioned. The other good thing about merit scholarships is that it tends to be renewable. So that's why it's really important to kind of get the merit scholarship established as part of the admissions process, because then the college awards it for 4 years. So as long as, which is the next bullet point, usually the student has to meet a GPA requirement. I wouldn't worry too much yet about what that GPA requirement is. You may not even be aware of it. It's something that the colleges will let you know when they award the information, and there's more detail about the merit scholarship. But at the time that you make the decision that your student's going to go to that college and potentially accept the merit scholarship, you should absolutely be aware of what that GPA requirement is. Some colleges make it really easy. They're just looking for a 3.0. They want to make sure the student is in good standing, and they give the scholarship every year. There are some colleges, I've definitely seen it, that have a higher GPA requirement. It could be a 3.5. And even though your student might have been a great student in high school, we all know they go through transitions, and that 3.5 may be harder to get in college. So I just kind of, again, put the word out now to make you aware to look for those details later on in the process. Have an honest conversation with your student. How comfortable do you feel about this GPA requirement? Because the worst situation is if you and your student, your student enrolls in a college, you know what the costs are, and your costs are based on the fact that they're getting a merit scholarship and then they lose their merit scholarship. Your student's still there, and now that college has become much more expensive. Okay, so somebody asked, is a GPA requirement weighted or unweighted? Honestly, it's going to be dependent on the college, but most of the colleges don't usually do weighted or unweighted GPAs. It's a college GPA. It is not the high school GPA. Oh, if a student gets an award, gets a merit scholarship, do they need to apply each year? No. So that's actually another plus for getting merit scholarships as opposed to private scholarships. Private scholarships are usually 1 year. They're kind of like one and done. So that means your student has to go through the process again every year of finding and applying for new private scholarships. Okay, let me go on. So there are 3 types of merit scholarships, and these are not official categories or labels. These are just the way we've grouped them together to better explain to families how colleges award their merit scholarships. The first is automatic, and I'm going to give you some examples, but it's kind of what the name implies, that your student just applies to the college. There's no other additional applications that they need to send in. And usually that college is looking at every application that comes through. Most of these types of colleges also are using grids, and which they share on their website, and there'll be, potentially definitely a GPA requirement, may or may not be a test score requirement in the world of test optional that we're in, but there's little your student has to do to if they apply, their application is going to be reviewed, and then they'll be notified if they get merit scholarships. So that's kind of the easiest type of process to go through. The harder part of all of this is obviously finding those schools that offer merit, that offer automatic, and where your student has the potential of getting an automatic merit scholarship based on their GPA and test scores. And again, we'll talk more about how you find them, but that's automatic. Competitive is that the student probably has to do something more than just sending in their application. There may be a separate application to apply for merit. There could be a interview process. There could be an additional essay that needs to be written. So there's usually other steps that need to be taken, and there's another review process before the school awards merit scholarships in that case. And the third is if your student has some sort of talent, and it could be art, theater, music, colleges, specific colleges may award merit scholarships for these types of talents. The reason why we put it in its own category is there are usually additional requirements. So there could be a portfolio that needs to be sent in. There's an audition that might need to be scheduled. There could be additional recommendations that need to be gathered. So we want to make families aware about it, and particularly in competitive situations and in the talent situation where your student is trying to get merit, deadlines matter. And I'm going to show you in a little bit different types of deadlines, but you need to be aware because there could be a deadline for when a student has to sign up to make a date for an audition. There could be a deadline for when the essay is due for an honors program or merit scholarship. And those deadlines could very much be different than what the overall application deadline might be for those schools. So really important to keep track of deadlines. And this is an area your student may or may not be good at. So I would definitely, talk to them about how you want to manage it, how you want to help them manage it. Is it a joint spreadsheet? Make them really aware of checking their email address. Families do it differently, and it's just all dependent on how you work with your students. Sometimes a student will give their parent login information for the email that they're using for colleges. If you're early enough in this process, you might set up a separate email address just for the purpose of the college application process, that, again, you as a parent and the student have access to it, because we know our students are definitely not looking at email like as on a daily basis. Even me as an adult, I get overwhelmed with email, and I'm not, seeing everything. So the more eyes there are on that inbox, the better, because your student could be invited to apply for merit scholarships after they send in their application. So you want to be looking at the inbox and seeing what colleges are sending them. Okay, so here's an example of automatic merit scholarships. It's just one example of a college I've been following, quite honestly, since before the pandemic. It's Miami University in Ohio. In the bottom right, and this is a college that also has a grid that they show on their website. So at the bottom right is quite honestly their grid before the pandemic, and you could see that they had a requirement for ACT and SAT scores plus a GPA. And then they showed you for Ohio residents how much merit that they were offering, and versus non-Ohio residents, how much they were offering. And then as you look at these charts, you go to the left, go up to the right, go up to the top left. The top left is the most recent one. You can see that things changed, and things even now, post-pandemic, are still going to change year to year. Obviously, because of test optional, this college dropped the requirement for test scores in order to give out merit scholarships. But you can also see when they dropped the test scores, they started tweaking with the GPA. So in 2021, they increased the top GPA range that you needed to get for their top merit award. As you go to 2024 and 2025, actually, it looks like they kept things the same between last year and this year, but from 2021 to 2024, and I skipped a few years, you can see that, again, they increased their GPA number again and went higher for that top range. So, this is a college's prerogative, kind of emphasizing again, this is institutional money. This is their money. So they can decide what the requirements are that they want students to have before they're giving them merit. And every year, colleges are looking at their results. There's a huge industry of consultants behind this. It's called enrollment management. And they are looking at, and they do it based on modeling to say, this is a student with this GPA, we offered this amount of money, and we got, on a percentage basis, this number of students who actually decided to apply, enroll, and accept. Ultimately, the bottom line number for a college is who accepted, and how much did it cost us as a college to get that student to accept? How much did it cost us in marketing dollars, and how much did it cost us in merit scholarship dollars to get that student to say yes? So that's why every year they might tweak these numbers based on the results they got the previous years, good and bad. I'll give you a quick story. I don't know what the outcome of this is going to be. I don't know how much anybody has followed this in the news. I actually happen to live in the suburbs of Philadelphia, so I'm aware of the very much more aware of the colleges in the Philadelphia area. Drexel had a they missed their enrollment numbers this year, and they had 500 fewer freshmen enroll. That's a huge number, 500. There were other reasons, last year there were problems with FAFSA. I'm sure that played into their 500, number that they missed. But part of it could have been that their offers were not as competitive as other colleges. So I am sure that Drexel is relooking at what they did last year, and are going to make changes for how they offer both need-based aid and merit scholarship this year, because they had a huge, miss. And, that 500 freshmen isn't just impacting them 1 year, it impacts them for 4 years. So that's a situation that didn't work out for the school, and they're, I'm sure, going to recalculate everything they did. But there could be other schools that it worked in the opposite, that got much more applications than they did in previous years, and they accepted a lot more students, and then students yielded at a higher rate. Well, that college might think, wow, we did really well. Maybe we have room. We're going to tighten our requirements. Maybe we're going to increase the GPA again. Maybe we're going to reduce how much merit we offer. So this is the type of tweaking and analysis that goes on every summer after their admission season is over and before the next one really starts. Okay. The other thing I'd like to point out about this example for Miami University is that they happen to have a footnote, and they make it clear that the GPA that they are showing on their website is a weighted GPA. I will say this is a little bit more unusual because most colleges are using an unweighted GPA that they recalculate based on your students' core subjects. I point this out because it's just really important for you, your student, particularly for the colleges that have these grids, that you understand what GPA that they are using and how it's calculated. You just don't want to be in the situation where you think, your student's 4.0 is calculated the way they're going to calculate it. And so you think that they're going to be in a certain merit scholarship range, and it turns out that they're not. And if it's not clear on the website, this is a great question. Your student can email their college, the admissions rep, and ask, and just say, they are trying to get clarity and want to know what GPA is listed on the website for merit scholarships. Is it weighted? Is it unweighted? If it's unweighted, and even if it's weighted, how are you doing the calculation? And just confirm what courses are included in that calculation. Okay, so somebody's asking, is there a database of schools with very explicit merit criteria based on GPA and test scores? There, unfortunately, is not. There is data called the Common Data Set, which I'll talk a little bit about that, which shares some of this information. But honestly, the whole data of the world is a little bit of a colleges just don't cooperate. They don't want to, maybe on some level, share this information, and it's really hard to create the database that you're talking about, because colleges are constantly changing their policy. I mean, what they have on their website in August could change by September. A college that when the Common App opens says that they're not going to ask for not going to ask for supplements, like 2 or 3 weeks later add a supplement. So things are constantly changing, but we can show you ways that you can narrow it down and start to figure it out. There's just not that like clean cut ideal database that says, these are all their criteria, these are the schools with these criteria, and this is the money that they're offering. Okay, lots of good questions. I'm going to look at them a little bit later. I just want to get through some more of the slides. Okay, here are some examples of colleges that have competitive merit aid applications. And the reason why I point these 2 colleges out, the one on the left is University of Southern California. The one on the right is Boston University. But the reason why I point them out, particularly USC, is the deadline for merit is earlier than their regular decision deadline. So if your student wants to be considered for merit scholarships at USC, they need to apply as part of the early action round. So they need to apply by November 1st. For a very small number of majors, they can apply by December 1st, but the majority of students have to apply November 1st. And if they can still apply for regular decision, but they won't be considered for merit. So this is just a perfect example where the deadlines really matter. Same thing on the right for a BU. Their deadline for merit is December 1st. The other reason I point out BU is they are test optional. They are saying that the test scores are not required to apply for merit. And that's, definitely true. But they're also giving you a sense at the very bottom of the caliber of the student that tends to get merit. So their students tend to have SAT scores of 1,500 and ACTs of 33. If your student's not going to send in a test score, which again, they don't have to if they're test optional. If for BU, the students will be considered for merit. You just want to make sure that everything else about that student's application kind of quantifies or gives the person reviewing it the sense that your student has that caliber of academics, even though they're not sharing a test score. So, just wanted to kind of share students can apply test optional, but if there are students sending in their test score, that the test optional student just needs to make sure that their application comes across as showing them as a strong student, and that they don't necessarily need to show their test scores to have evidence that they're in the same caliber as students who might perform well on tests. Okay, here's the section what I call know your numbers. The 4 numbers to know are COA, cost of attendance. This is the sticker price. This is the most the college is going to cost you. SAI, which is the student aid index. This is the number that gets calculated when you fill out your FAFSA. This is the number that colleges will use to determine the next line, whether or not your family has financial need. And they will use that number financial need to say how much need-based aid we're going to give you. Or if you have no financial need, then that shows the college and you that the only way you're going to get any money to reduce the cost of college is by getting a merit scholarship. And the last number is your family budget. So regardless of the top 3 numbers, you as a family need to decide how much do we have saved? What are the other sources of money that we have? How much are we willing to take on in loans? How much are we willing to spend to send our student to college? You should be thinking about that number, having those conversations. I don't know if anybody is on here with a 9th grader, but definitely in 9th grade, 10th grade. If you're doing it that early, you still have obviously a few more years. You could save more, but you're going to understand the general ballpark of what you're willing to pay for college. And there's no judgment on this. So I've worked with families who have very good incomes, might even have very good savings, but they just have a limit to what they think a college education is worth or they're willing to pay. And then there are other families that say, wherever my student wants to go, I'm going to make it happen. Again, no judgment either side that you're on, or if you're in the middle. I just really encourage that you as a family figure out what that number is before you go into the process. It's kind of like, any other big purchase process, a car, a house, would you go to a realtor and say, and not have a budget in mind of what you can spend for a house? We wouldn't. So it's the same thing, with college. What is, I think, a better structure in the home buying, process is that there are mortgage companies and they tell you what you're pre-approved for. There really should be some sort of pre-approval process for college, but you as a family need to kind of do that type of pre-approval and say, this is, again, what I have, what I'm willing to spend, and figure out early on what your tolerance is. Some families absolutely say 0 loans. Some families say, okay, I'm willing to have my student take out the federal student loans. And some families say, hey, I just wasn't able to save the money I wanted to save while they were growing up. I'm willing to take on some debt too, in addition to my student taking on debt. And again, no judgment on any of those outcomes. Just have those decisions ahead of time before going into the process. Okay, so this is a really interesting chart. We did a session just 2 nights ago, called what is SAI and how you can calculate it. It's a great session. Honestly, everybody on here should go watch it. It's particularly helpful for families in 9th, 10th, 11th grade. 12th grade, you'll get value out of it. You just won't be able to take any of the actions based on it, because this is the type of information you need to know earlier in the process to actually make an impact. So if you go to, we have the Road to College YouTube channel. It's the first video there right now because we just did it. Again, I highly recommend you go and check it out. But I grabbed this chart from that session where we discussed about the whole formula of student aid index and what pieces of the formula you as a parent and your student might be able to impact. And why I wanted to show this is that this gives you a sense, and again, this is a chart based on a family of 4, okay, that files their taxes jointly, which makes a difference. And if down the left is the income, that parent income, and on the top is non-retirement parent assets. So you can see that if you have a family with an income of 350,000 and above, they're not going to get any need-based aid. So for those families with 350,000 income and above, regardless of your assets, again, if you want to lower your cost of college, you need to find a college that's going to offer your student merit scholarships. 529 money for this purpose of the chart is okay, a little complicated, but 529 plans where the parent is the owner and the student going to college is the beneficiary, that money is included in the non-retirement money. 529 plans where a sibling is the beneficiary, that money is not included in the assets. And if 529 money where a grandparent or a non-parent is the owner, that money is not included. But, and then the other reason why I wanted to show this chart is that for the families in green, the kind of the medium green from like 200,000 to 300,000, you are in, kind of like I call you on the edge. Depending on the cost of college, you might have financial need at some colleges, and you might not have financial need at other colleges. So, you can kind of swing either way. So you might be looking for some colleges that offer need-based aid, and you also will probably be looking for colleges that can offer your student merit. But for the families in red, you're only looking for colleges that offer merit if you want to reduce the cost of college. For the purpose of this chart, home equity is not included. Let me just say, so this chart is showing your SAI, which is based on the FAFSA calculation. This chart is not showing what your outcome might be from a CSS profile school. But we don't know the calculations of the CSS profile schools, so we kind of use the SAI as the as directional indicator of how you do your searching. Okay, so now how do you use these numbers, right? So in the case on the left, I'm going to show you this is a family that is going to have need, right? So their SAI is 30,000, and you can see how your need changes based on the cost of attendance of the college. So the first college has a cost of attendance of 50,000. So that family's need is 20,000. It's the difference between the cost of attendance and the SAI. If they're looking at a more expensive school, then their need's going to grow because their SAI stays the same, but the difference between the cost of attendance and SAI grows. So now their need is 50,000. So for this family, if they want to afford either college, the $50,000 college or the $80,000 college, they're going to want to look for a college that is going to help with their financial need. So there's different levels, right, of decision making, or different levels of peeling this process apart. You need to know your numbers. You need to look at what your financial need is going to be at each college. And then you need to know the college's, what I call their financial aid philosophy, right? Just because you have need does not mean that the college is going to help you with that need. Some colleges do, and they might be very generous. And some colleges might say, yes, you have need, but we don't have enough money to help you, or we can help you with some of the need. So that's going to be college dependent, but we can show you how you can find out that information. But that's why at different colleges, you might get different amounts of money. And because they have well, for two reasons. One is your need is going to change, and they have different philosophies. On the picture on the right, this family I purposely picked, they have a very high SAI, 90,000. So at most colleges, their SAI is going to be above the cost of attendance. So there's not going to be a college they're going to show that they have any financial need. So for this family, again, the only way that they're going to be able to reduce their costs is to find a college that's going to offer their student merit. In this case, right, merit is not based on the need, so it's going to be based on your student's academic record. And then let's factor in your family budget. So everything I just talked about is how the college, views costs and how they view your need. But to some extent, and not that it's meaningless, it's actually, very important. You need to know how they're going to be doing their calculations, but you also have to layer in, what are you willing and able to afford to pay for college? A lot of times that SAI calculation, people are shocked because the majority of the calculation is impacted by your family's income. So they're just blown away and said, well, I had no idea that, I was going to get an SAI of 90,000. I'm only willing to pay, 45,000. And that's okay. I mean, you can decide what, you're willing to pay. You just have to use those numbers as part of the research and searching process. Again, it's like any purchase. I can be a multimillionaire and decide that cars are not a big deal for me. And I want, I'm only going to spend 30,000 on a car, although I could afford to spend 100,000. So so that's what this budget number is about. And again, there's no judgment. There's lots of reasons why people have different numbers. And I'll give you one quick example. We worked with a family with a student knew that they want to go on to medical school. So they know that in their future that, medical school is going to cost a lot of money. So they didn't want to spend a lot of money on undergrad. That was one reason. The second reason is the family also had a sibling that had disabilities. So the parents knew, even though they had a good income, they had good savings, they needed to take care of the student with the disability. So there's lots of reasons why your numbers might say one thing that you can afford, but there's other reasons behind the numbers that you're not willing to spend what it looks like on paper you can afford. Anyhow, again, that's all to say it's really important to know what your family's budget is. So in this case, the budget is 45,000. This might push this family to look for colleges that have a cost of attendance that are 45,000 or less. That's the first example. Here's a college that costs 40,000. By default, in theory, they're not going to get any need-based aid. This college may or may not offer merit, but according to this family's budget, they can afford it. So that's a college I would put in the column that's affordable for this school, for this student. The last column is a college that has a cost of attendance of 80,000, so it's above their budget, but they know that school gives out merit scholarships, and they've done their research and feel that their student has a really good chance of getting merit scholarships from that college. So the student has the potential of getting 25,000 in merit. That brings down the cost of attendance. Plus, that family is willing to have the student take out the federal student loans. And then there's still a little gap that family might not have to, they might have to figure out how to pay for. But at least this is the type of thinking and research and analysis that every family can do before your student even sends in an application. So I am emphasizing that because I want to avoid families being surprised or didn't know that it was going to cost what it what the college sends them in March or April. No, none of us can know an exact dollar amount, but you should be able to honestly get into close to like $5,000 or $8,000 estimate of what a school is going to cost your family before your student even sends in an application. And that's how you make sure that there are affordable colleges on your students list. And that's how you don't have financial surprises next spring when your student has to choose a college. And quite honestly, that's how you're just an educated consumer in the process. Okay, so somebody's saying, let me just take a sip. Just to be clear, you only get your true SAI after you complete and submit your FAFSA, correct? In your experience, how close is the result you get from the estimate of the student aid calculator on the FAFSA website to the SAI you get when you complete the form? Good question. I kind of skipped this, not intentionally, but you can estimate your SAI. Just the easiest thing is Google SAI estimator or estimate SAI. Hopefully one of the top listings will be, as this person is mentioning, a link to the federal government has an estimator. Fill it out. Is it accurate? Oh, thank you for putting the link. Somebody I just spoke to actually the person who I did the webinar with on Tuesday night. It's not 100% accurate. It's because they have not yet updated that estimator with the most recent charts that they're using for this coming 2025-2026 FAFSA. My guess is they will in another few weeks before the FAFSA opens, which is December 1st. But so they're using last year's charts. I would still do the calculation. I would say it could be off again by like $5,000, but it's not going to be like majorly off. Where the estimator says, your SAI is 30,000 and it really turns out to be 90,000. So it will be close. Do it now, do it in a few, maybe in December when they make the updates. But definitely worth getting that number, from the government. We've been working, I don't have it ready. We've been working on a Excel spreadsheet where people could enter in their information for SAI and they can see the calculation. Hopefully we'll have it soon. Just don't have that available yet. Okay, actually, I'm going to skip this. Just let's see, because of timing. And then just talk about tips for searching and building a balanced college list. Know your numbers. That's kind of the first one here, right? Know your SAI, know your family budget. Know whether you are a family that needs to look for colleges that are going to give need-based aid, or you're looking for colleges that are going to give merit. The very common question is parents, or when you're kind of early in this process and you don't haven't educated yourself yet, there's this concept that the more selective schools do not give out merit scholarships. Think of the top 20 schools, obviously definitely all the Ivy Leagues. They are very generous colleges. They help a certain type of family with a lot of money, but they only give out need-based aid. So don't expect any merit scholarships from a very selective school. It's really just just a matter of supply and demand. They don't need to use their money to attract better academically strong students because they're already coming. So they use whatever money that they have, and they have a lot, and they're, and they're pretty wealthy colleges, they use it to support college students that have a financial need. So what you'll tend to see is that if you kind of look at the rankings, that the higher ranked schools are giving out need-based aid. The kind of, as you go down the rankings, that some of those schools start to give out merit and need-based aid. And then kind of as you get even further down, the schools are not giving out need-based aid, they're only giving out merit. That's why, again, it's so important to know as a family, where do you fall? Do I need merit? Do I need need? And then what does the college offer? If you're earlier on in this process, I really encourage you to be open-minded and do what I call, just start with a wide net. So, and I'm going to jump right after this to our search tool to show you how it works. Don't go in with a preconceived notion that my student can only go to this school because it's the school that I went to, or it's the school that I'm most familiar with. Do a search and kind of maybe be a little blind to the names of the schools and see what comes up. I just think that's a good way to start. Doesn't mean you have to end there, but then you might uncover a college that you just weren't familiar with. Again, maybe you are going to be more open-minded to, well, my student only wanted to go to college in these states. But if you're more open-minded and find a school in a different state, it might be more affordable and still give the same, good type of education. So again, just be open-minded. Okay, I'm going to skip now to the tool that we've put together. Oh, I'll tell you really quickly that the data that we have in our tool comes from the common data set. So a lot of families, you can search an individual college's common data set, just say the name of the college, like you can Google Tulane and then common data set. You should get a link to their most recent common data set. But there's no place except for what we've put together where you can do like what we call a reverse lookup, where you can say, this is the criteria of my student or what we're looking for. What colleges using the common data set information match this profile? So this just saves you a lot of time and may uncover colleges that you hadn't thought about, because unless you know the name of the college that you want to look at, you won't be able to find their common data set. And then the other piece of information that we have that's unique is what it's called the crowdsourced data. So that is, and I mentioned earlier, I asked somebody to share their students' offers. Over the past 6 years, we've collected families' actual offers. And I can't say we have it for every school, but we have for a lot of schools. There's a button where you can see the crowdsourced offers for that school by year, and you can also sort it by, we have it sorted by SAI range, because the SAI range is kind of an indicator of kind of a family's wealth. And so, or you'll actually, so anyhow, you'll be able to see families that are similar to yours on an economic level, and then look at how much money their students were offered. And then you can see the students' profile of, were they, what their GPA was, did they send in a test score, and if they did, what their test score is. Okay, so let me stop sharing this and go to the tool. Okay, can you just give me a thumbs up? Can you see? Yes, thanks. Okay, so it's called Insights. You can make a free account. Here, I'm just putting this in. It's insights.road2college.com. I'm just gonna log in. If you are creating a free account for the first time, it will ask you, obviously, your name, set up a password. It asks you our two required fields are what year in high school is your student graduating, because that, if we know that, we can help you a lot in terms of just educational information about what you need to know. And the other piece of information is just, are you the parent? Are you the student? Are you a professional who might be using it? So you just need to answer that information, and then you can create a free account. The free account lets you do some searching, but obviously we limit the number of searches you can do, and you can't see the results of all the searches, but you get a sense of what the tool is like. So I'm going to sign in. I have, I've signed in with my Google account. You can, search for an individual college. I'll put in Tulane. And, this is information that you would see if you pulled up Tulane's common data set. We have what the endowment is, the breakout of men versus women, the different breakout of ethnicity. This is, the GPA stats. Are they test optional, test required? We have the 75th percentile, which I'm going to show you what you need to use to see if your student is that strong academic student. And then we also break out their overall admit rate. Tulane's pretty unusual. That's kind of one of the reasons why I want to highlight it. This is their early decision admit rate. Obviously, look, you could see it's much higher, 68% versus 15% for the regular or the overall. Their regular decision is 11%. Again, Tulane's pretty unusual, but these are the numbers that if your student were interested in Tulane, you should know that Tulane takes 65% of their class early decision. So if your student is interested in Tulane and they are not applying early decision, and this is not to force you or them to apply early decision, it's just to know what the reality is. Getting in regular decision is much harder. So we break out these numbers because we do the math behind it. A lot of other places just show you this 15%, or they might show you the 68%, but they don't show you the other numbers. Okay, so here's an example, the crowdsourced offers. Actually, here, this was, you can see for Tulane, again, we kind of we show you in the order of SAI, and let's see, I don't have, oh, here it is, okay. And you can just scroll through the offers. I would scroll to the section that's similar to your SAI, which if you're looking for merit is probably an SAI of above 60,000. And you can see the type of offers that families received. You can see what state they were from, because sometimes, obviously Tulane might be trying to pull from certain states to get a little bit more geographic diversity. You can see the GPA range. If a student has listed their test score in our offers, it means that they submitted their test score. So if it's listed here, and if it's not listed, like in this example, this student applied test optional. So, I find this is interesting information. We haven't yet used it to do any predictions, but it's definitely worth looking at, and you'll get a general sense. You can see here, I can see that that Tulane's merit is ranging from 10,000 to 25,000, even 30,000. So could be dependent on how strong these students were academically. So, okay, so that's one piece of information, but let me go to Power Search. That's how you can do the reverse lookup. So here, and this is where I encourage you to be open-minded. We tend to still tell people to use test scores to do the searching. And the reality is, and the reason why, even though if the schools are test optional, they still collect and share the most information about the breakdown of their students by test score. So if you'll see, and these might be schools you haven't heard of, but you can see, let's say, Abraham Lincoln University, the average GPA, we don't have that information. It's not that we don't want to have it, it's that the school isn't sharing it. So for whatever reason, on the common data set, schools are just not as diligent about sharing GPA information. They are much more diligent about sharing test score information. So that's the only reason why I encourage people to first search and filter by test score. You can filter by and search by GPA. Just know that there might be a lot of schools that don't match because they just don't supply GPA information. And for the student who might say, well, I'm going to apply test optional, you can still apply test optional, just even though you're doing your searching using a test score. And if your student doesn't have a test score because they didn't even take a test, you can do an estimate to convert the GPA to a test score. You can go to a website called, I would Google Prep Scholar GPA test score conversion. They have a great table that converts, if your student has this GPA, this is the range that they're gonna have. So test score, I'm gonna, if I, let's say, do SAT, I'm gonna say, let's look at a SAT between 1,200 and 1,300. And I want to match all the colleges where this SAT range is what I call in the top 75th percentile. So these are going to be the strongest students academically for these colleges because they're at the top of the college's academic range. And you see, just by selecting the range and saying I want to look at the 75th percentile, the sort automatically changes. So now there's 302 colleges that have a 1,200 to 1,300 SAT range that is at the very top of what their academic range is when they enroll students. Okay, so that's a start. That's the first start. So we know if my student applied to these schools and they had this test score, that they're going to look like that they're strong compared to other students that apply. Now I can sort these schools. And I'm going to sort because I'm a family that I know I'm not going to get need-based aid. So I want to know how much merit do these schools offer. So I'm going to sort these results by average merit A. Okay. So now, all of a sudden, oops, and that's probably a mistake. I think I'll have to check into that after. I know 184,000 is more merit than any school I know is offering. So that's definitely a data thing I'll look into. But so put that one aside and look at all the other schools, which are schools I know and very familiar that do give this type of aid. And you can see Susquehanna offers, 39,000. So if I'm a student that has a test score between 1,200 and 1,300. This is just kind of like this you're scratching the surface on the research that you need to do, but I might put Susquehanna on my list to look into further because I know that I can get this merit, and I might even get more than 39 because this is the average. So now the cost that is 70,000 for me might be 30,000. So all of a sudden that sticker price looks a lot more affordable if I factor in that I can get merit from this college. The same thing at at Coe College, Washington and Jefferson College. These may be schools you're familiar with, but they may not be. These are quite honestly all very good schools to consider, again, if your student is in that academic range. So what I would do in using the tool is now I can look through my results and I can start to add these colleges to a list. I can create a new list, name it whatever I want. I have unlimited number of lists I can create. I can, put favorites. I can add this to my favorite list. And so now I'm creating a smaller group of colleges on a list that I'm going to go look at more of the data for these colleges. Okay, so now once I've created some lists, then I go to my section that says My Lists. And I can now see the colleges that I was just looking at in a table format. So here's a list I made earlier. It's 64 colleges, but now I can kind of see it in a different way. And I can add other information on that the tool provides. So I'm going to add information about admissions. I'm going to add information about aid and merit scholarships, and I'm going to add financial information. So it just adds it onto the table. And the reason why we do it in these sections, some people only want to look at, admissions information. Some people, the data is overwhelming. So we give you the option. You can add as much data as you want, or you can only look at it in the section. So now I've added all the data here, which is fine. And you can scroll through the columns. Any of these columns, you can sort ascending or descending. I can sort this by, average GPA. In this case, which is good, all of these colleges, no, actually not. You can see down here that these bottom colleges, we didn't have GPA information. Again, not that we didn't want it, but they weren't offering it. So there was no way of getting it. So you can sort any of these columns, ascending or descending, that you want. Let me just go to some of the set columns that I find interesting. Let's see. Okay, here, 75th percentile. But again, I know I already filtered these schools. So these are all going to have a 75th percentile SAT between 1,200 and 1,300. I might want to look at what their early decision rates are. So here's, some schools, early decision, you apply early, they're accepting you. So, Pace University, if you apply early, 94% of the people who apply early, get in. Early decision is binding, so you might not want to do that. You might want to look at what's the early action rates. So if I apply to LaSalle, 95% of the students who apply early action are getting in. Again, these might then be schools that you want to put on your students list because you know that they can apply early and you know that they, have a high probability of getting in, and they might get merit. It doesn't mean that they're going to choose to accept to go there, but at least, you've got, a good school on the list that fits a lot of requirements and they get in early. And so it just takes away anxiety, right? That the earlier your student can get into a college, that they've got something that they can go to. Here's, let's see, some other information that usually people are looking at. Okay, average merit award. So I can't remember how I created this list. I definitely did it by SAT scores, but now I might want to sort my list by who's giving the most merit. Okay, yeah, so Susquehanna comes up again, Kalamazoo, Co-College. So now I'm just showing you all the different ways that once you create your lists, that you can look at other data that's a little hard to look at in the Power Search, and sort the schools. And then if you want to, you can continue to make a smaller list. So I can now click some of these schools and say, hey, I want to put like these top 5 schools on a different list now. So now I can either delete them or I can add them to a new list. So this just kind of helps you do research and continue to narrow and narrow and narrow down the list. So let's see, it's a little after 1. Let me just answer some questions. I will say this tool is it's a subscription, so you can sign up for a month and then cancel. You can sign up. We give you a discount if you sign up for a year for families earlier on, particularly 10th and 11th grade. Sometimes, it does make sense if you want to sign up for a year. We have actually different levels too. Let me up here. So if you sign up, we have this higher level premium, we call it. And with that, in addition to the tool, we offer monthly webinars with experts. And we just actually, we have a former admissions officer who we've done some public sessions with. Her name is Terry Cowdrey. She is excellent. We just actually made a plan with her. She's going to manage all of the premium sessions for this coming year. So as part of like the premium level, you get invited to monthly sessions. We have a separate Facebook group with just those people who they can ask questions. And then the other thing that's really helpful is that you get a discount on one-on-one services if you need them. So for families with seniors, they're coming in for their one-on-one services now, where they just want extra help with an essay, or they want somebody to review their CSS profile, or we look over common apps. So this is kind of like what I like to say is we try and meet people wherever they need the help. You can get the lowest level here, and you can get it monthly, and you can do everything yourself, which is great. You can get the higher level and get more access to content and live people who you can ask questions. You can never use a one-on-one service. And then if you want to use a one-on-one service, you can get a discount. So those are all of the options. And let me go to the questions. Oh, can we export our list to Excel files? Yes, you can, but you can't export unlimited. Otherwise, we'd be giving away the database. So I think that there might be a limit up to, you can export up to 30 colleges. But quite honestly, if you email me and you want like an extra export or one or two, I mean, we'll give it to you. Again, we just put the limit on it so that people can't, take all the data away. Let's see. What's another question? Oh, the essay. Oh, thank you. The essay one-on-one services was great. I'm glad that you shared that. Does the tool have pre-built lists? That's a great question. We are working on that now. So we can, if you need help creating a list, you can email me. We can create the list for you and we can share it, and then it automatically goes into your account. But we're working on a feature where we create pre-built lists, and so they're sitting in your account like before you even start. But let me just show you quickly about sharing lists. If you've created a list and you come to my list, you can see here there's this button share, and that's how we create lists and give them to you. You have to just pick which schools on that list you want to share. Again, we max it out at 30 so that people aren't like sharing, everything, with a lot of people. But you can definitely share lists, and we can share lists with you. Okay, so somebody said, I tried to create an engineering list and a lot of schools did not show up. Feel free, if you can send me more details, email me at support@road2college.com and tell me the exact filters that you use to create the engineering list, and we will definitely look into it. Does this school have a parameter that identifies schools that give IB credit? I don't think we do. I'm trying to think. Let me just look up one school. Let's see. Oops, here. Let me just go back to the Tulane example. You know what? We don't have, I thought we had something that said about giving AP or IB credit. We don't have that information. Sorry. Yeah, so don't have that on this version. Let's see. Are the figures showing based on annual fees or for a 4-year program? Really good question. These are annual fees. So the tuition listed is the annual tuition, and the merit scholarship offered is annual. Let me just tell you one other thing, because we kind of spent a lot of time on this. The cost of attendance in the tool and Insights is very up to date. And the reason why I mention that is the common data set, if you look at that, is actually might be for tuition like over 1.5 years old. So colleges put out their new tuition numbers in July and August of the fall before your student goes to college. So we spent August the only way you can get up to date tuition numbers is by going to colleges' websites. So we spent all of August going to the websites of colleges to get their up to date tuition numbers. Just something to know, because you might see different numbers on different websites, and they're usually, it could be 1 year, sometimes 2 years old. We received our first acceptance, and the memo did not include any merit. Would the schools include any merit offers in the acceptance, and do they offer merit at a later date? Yes, this does vary. Some schools might just be sending out their acceptances and do not include merit. Some include merit at the same time as acceptance. Honestly, I don't know what school it is. I would have your student write back and say, and ask, when will the school be sending out their merit information? Because you're excited that they got in and you want to know if they're also going to receive merit. So you can spin it positively and find out when they're going to send that information. I registered for the call on Wednesday night, but could not make it. Will a link to the recording be sent? Yeah, honestly, we did send out a link to the recording, but again, if you can go to the Road to College YouTube channel, that session and recording is listed there. I don't share the individual slides from today, but we share the link, so you can obviously scroll through and see the slides. Okay, it seems very invasive and time consuming if you know your SAI is higher than the school's costs, yet I've read you still must complete a CSS or a FAFSA to be considered for merit scholarships. Is this accurate? Why would they need your financial information if you don't qualify for a financial need? Why do they want to have any, and especially if you don't want to have any loans? So, so what this person is asking, Stephanie is asking, is that some schools ask that you fill out financial aid forms, even if just to be considered for merit. So you have to ask each school. This is again a policy by school by school policy, so it varies by school. Usually they will actually have that information on their website. They'll say, you know, a FAFSA or a CSS profile is required. I'm a little surprised about CSS profiles being required. I understand why schools might want to ask for FAFSA, and the reason is, and I you know, I can't say for certainty, but I can say with you know, just from my knowledge of talking to admissions people, if this is a case and the school is awarding merit scholarships and they're asking you to fill out financial aid forms, they're not using that information to award the merit. They want to make sure that if you're eligible for any sort of need-based aid, particularly from the government, that you get that aid before they offer you merit scholarships. So it's just a way for them to make sure that you're not missing out on additional money, because, you know, if you don't fill out those forms, they have no idea whether you're eligible. But again, you should ask each individual school and see if it's really necessary or not. And they might make an exception too. My student was saying that school was telling them us to fill out the FAFSA as a junior. Is that accurate? It seems early. That is not accurate. So if your student is a junior in high school, they do not need to fill out the FAFSA. I mean, in theory, I guess you could fill it out just to see what you wanted, if you want to see what your SAI might be, like the most accurately, but you don't have to. You have to fill it out if your student is a senior. But that's not accurate information, and unfortunately, I'm surprised that the high school is telling you that. Let's see. Just to be clear, you only get your true SAI after you complete and submit your FAFSA. That's correct. Oh yeah, I answered that question. Okay. I believe it's important to have the conversation when your student is in 10th grade this year, since the SAI number will be based on this year's tax returns if they will be graduating in 2026. So Reshmi, if I'm pronouncing your name correct, I love that you know this information. So what Reshmi is saying is that, and I didn't actually go through all this detail, is your SAI or your FAFSA is based on taxes that they call are prior. So the way you calculate it is, if your student, let's say your student is a senior, they're going to enter their first semester of college is going to be the fall of 2025. So the taxes that are going to be used for your FAFSA are 2 years earlier than 2025. So the taxes that are going to be used are the 2023 taxes. So so Resmi is saying, which is very true, that's why we encourage, but it's so hard for parents, and I understand, to kind of know the importance that you do your finances and you look at your their SAI, and you have these conversations in 10th grade, because it's the taxes that end in December of 11th grade that are going to be used for your financial aid calculation. So for your seniors, right, your tax year has already passed. It was 2023. You probably didn't know all this information, right? And the tax year has already, gone by. But for seniors, and we're actually going to have a session in a few weeks just on this, your tax year hasn't ended yet. It's going to end this December, because your taxes are going to be the 2024 taxes that are going to be used to calculate your SAI. And going even further for the 10th graders, your tax year is going to be the 2025 taxes. So you even now have more, if you understand this, you have more time to plan and make an impact, because you'll understand the calculation. You can make educated decisions about if you're going to make changes to potentially your income and other things that might impact your taxes. If you know this in advance, you can make the changes. If you didn't know it in advance, then it's already passed and your tax year has closed. Okay. I attended the meeting on Wednesday, but why the numbers were more asset gives you more need? I'm not sure. Sorry, Maria, I'm not clear on what your question is. Maybe you can clear it up a little bit more if you want to write it again. Let's see what else there is. What if no cash flow, but multiple assets with high mortgages? Will they assume I can just sell for college? So, this was not a session, obviously, going into the calculation of the SAI and what the FAFSA asks you and what the CSS profile asks you, which we actually have done those sessions, and we will probably do them again in the future, and they are on our YouTube. I just bring that up because there's a lot of detail on each one of these topics. So this person is asking about a little bit about mortgages. For the FAFSA, your primary residence is not included. For a CSS profile school, and that's a school that is asking you to fill out this special aid form, you do ask to know the equity in your primary home. Will they assume that you can sell your, or mortgage your house to pay for college? I mean, they're not directly, telling you that you need to do that, but they feel that to get a true financial picture of somebody's family, that the amount of equity they have in a house kind of makes them potentially, more financially secure than a family that has less equity. So they're not telling you have to use that equity, but they are probably factoring in some percentage of that equity that, you in theory could borrow against. But that would be your decision about how you want to use the money. Let's see. Each high school calculates GPA differently. Is there any recalculation of GPA specifically for college, i.e. are schools not adding to GPA dual credits from community college? So you're absolutely right. Each high school calculates GPA differently. That is why most colleges recalculate GPAs for students, and they use it unweighted. So I will actually see if I have a source of a calculator that maybe I can send out that is a variation of recalculating a GPA without any weights to it. But I would definitely ask some of the colleges that your student is applying to how they are calculating GPA, and they might even give you an example. Okay, let's see. Do average GPAs receive merit? I think so. Let's do a search. Again, knowing that maybe all the schools that won't show up because they don't have GPAs, but let's clear the search. And let's do a search. What are we going to call it? Do we want to say a 3.0 is an average? Let's say a student with a 3 to a 3.25. Let's see. So there's 258 colleges, again, that gave us their GPA or report their GPA information in the common data set, that have an average GPA in that range. So, okay, now let's see, do those colleges offer merit? And they do. So again, you may or may not have heard of some of these schools, but I've definitely heard of Curry College, Dean College. I'm not familiar with New England College. Very familiar with Albright College. Actually, there's several members of the Paying for College 101 Facebook group whose students have gotten scholarships from Albright. So there's Drew University. So there's definitely colleges here with that your student with that GPA could still get merit. let's see. How do you know in a school if the major impacts the merit offered, i.e. nursing versus engineering at the same school? That's a good question. I don't really know that many schools that where the major is going to impact the merit. I mean, it definitely might. I think what the major impacts more is the acceptance rate. So for very popular majors or I mean, such as engineering, such as nursing, you might find that a school, I'm just making up the numbers, has an admit rate of 40%, but if you were to look at their numbers, which they don't always share, which is the problem, the admit rate by certain majors is much more competitive. So that definitely happens. I think you need to, if your student is applying to a competitive major, if they're applying to a college that is asking them to select the major as part of the application, or they have to apply to a specific school within the college, like the engineering school or the nursing school, then it is likely that those schools are harder to get into than the overall college in general. So, but in all honesty, there's a handful of schools that share that more detailed information. Part of the challenge of being a parent or just researching in this space is that we're at the whim of what information colleges are willing to share. So I wish that colleges shared more detailed admission rates by major. They just don't. There's just a few colleges that do that I know of, like University of Washington shares that. They share it for their computer science major. I don't know the numbers offhand, but whatever their overall admit rate is, their computer science admit rate is like 2%. So it's a very competitive major, even though maybe going to the college is less competitive or not as competitive. University of Illinois actually also shares more detailed acceptance rates by majors. There are a few more, but honestly, there's less than 10 that share that information compared to all the, colleges that are out there, which is just, unfortunate. Does talent need to be related to the student's intended major? That's yes, sometimes colleges do want that, and sometimes they don't. So that's going to be college specific. How many colleges should a student apply to? Okay, I'm going to use this as my last question to answer. That's a good question. So the number of colleges a student should apply that students have been applying to, quite honestly, has increased. When I first started in this space, and I started in this space really because I still am focused on helping families pay for college. That was my primary reason. But I'd say that students were applying to, honestly, 6, 7 colleges. That has crept up, 6 to 8 colleges. Now is definitely in the 10 to 12 colleges, and sometimes even more if you really are doing what we call chasing merit and you really want to, apply to colleges and to a range of colleges to make sure your student gets the best merit offer. And one of the reasons why this has been creeping up is quite honestly related to test optional. So when the pandemic hit and when the majority of schools went test optional, what that did to the system is that students sent in more applications. So the same number of students are still applying, but they're sending more applications to more colleges. And I think test optional just made students think, well, I don't have to take the test anymore. I don't have to submit it. So let me see what this is. Like, maybe let me give this a shot. Let me go for the reach school, because in the past, if a test score was required, it was almost like a gating mechanism, right? Like if your student just didn't have the average test score, the likelihood is that they probably weren't applying. Or if they had a test score that was way below the average, they probably weren't applying because they just felt like, I'm never going to get in. I don't even have the test scores that they're looking for. But now with test optional, quite honestly, I think that the advantage has gone to the college. So now the colleges are getting way more applications. They're what we call the top of the funnel. The number of applications that students are sending has just, in some cases, like increased 10-fold, 20-fold. And because of that, there's a lot more uncertainty in the system, right? There's colleges are getting some colleges are getting so many applications that a student that might used to kind of be accepted, we don't know anymore because they have more choice to choose from, the colleges. So what's this, as you kind of take this thinking further down, it's caused the students to feel uncertain, rightfully so. And so a school that they thought would be like a safety school, or a school that they might, have a very good chance of getting into, they don't know anymore. And so to increase their odds or improve their odds, they are applying to more colleges. And so that's how this has crept up each year. And in addition, the other thing that has happened, just as an overall trend, is that, I think I can stop sharing, is that we've seen more students apply to schools early. So they are not necessarily decision, but they are applying early actions. They're getting in their applications earlier, which I think is a good thing. But what you're going to see is that schools are going to, accept the students who they want to out of early decision. And some schools might actually defer a chunk of students. They're going to be like, thank you, glad you applied early. We kind of like what we see, but we're not going to make a decision until we see everybody else who applies regular decision. So these are just the trends that have happened early. The movement of more students applying early is really increased in the past 2 years, and definitely the number of applications that students are sending out has increased since the pandemic. Okay, everyone, I hope that this was helpful. Thank you for the video people. Nice to see your faces. Thank you for everybody else who attended. And if you have a senior applying early, I mean, these are important weekends. This weekend and the following weekend is probably all going to be about college and making those deadlines. If you need a little extra help, to tell you the truth, we don't take on, we don't help students like with major essay help right now, but we have a service that's called a review and polish. And if you want like another set of eyes to look over an essay, we can turn that around like within 2 days. So that might be something that you want to look at. If you want somebody else also to look at your student's Common App, we can still do that. So we're here for help for those families, and students kind of making these early deadlines. And for the families in 10th and 11th grade, please know your numbers, start to do your research. If you're interested in getting insights to, look at the data around a lot of colleges, this is the perfect time to do that type of work. Okay, everyone. Have a good weekend. Take care. Reach out with questions. You can send me questions at support@road2college.com. Bye.